we're facing savage wars. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of anxiety in the world. So this is complete madness. This is psychosis. This is not the world I want to leave my kids. My game is sort of over, you know? I think the biggest misconception that people have is that things are the way they are and they're never going to change. And things have always changed. The new is being born. And the new is something that's going to be born from a much higher level of consciousness, from a very different level of awareness. But this process is very messy. I believe we all have access to that, but we can't really change any of these things by moving the deck chairs around. We each only have the power to change ourselves. Intelligent is defined by intelligent outcomes. An intelligent outcome, by definition, is life-affirming, is conducive to life itself.
Robert Althuis is a spiritual philosopher, author, keynote speaker, and founder of a regenerative real estate and holistic wellness organization dedicated to embedding love and truth as a foundational spiritual principles for an awakening humanity. A former Fortune 100 executive and successful real estate and private equity entrepreneur, Robert once thrived in the material world until a profound spiritual awakening in 2015 activated his intuitive gifts of claircognizance and clairsentience, setting him on a radically different path. Today, he stands at the intersection of celestial wisdom and real-world transformation. A certified medium with an MBA from Columbia Business School, Robert blends deep esoteric knowledge with pragmatic insights, guiding elite leaders, visionaries, and seekers towards their highest potential. Robert, welcome.
Thank you, Kirill. I'm really excited to be here. I'm very proud. This is a proof print, actually. And this is what we're going to talk about today. The Crucible Manifesto. I wrote this in February. In about 2.5 weeks, was a part of a very inspired writing, and I'm very excited about this book. This is coming out on my birthday, actually, April 17th.
Oh, cool.
And I appreciate being here and talking about it.
Super excited to dive deep into all of the topics that you wrote about, for sure. So I think the first maybe question that we can start from is to mention about why did you write this book and why now?
Yeah, and are we taping already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Beautiful. All right. So let me start by saying where I'm a bit of an odd duck, right? I mean, I spent 25 years in the sort of highest echelons of business at Columbia Business School, top of GE and things like that. And so, I've had an inside look of how the world really works at the highest level of business and sort of come from that world. And that, was an eye-opener. I was a sort of a very high-paid mercenary in that system, and it's not a very pretty system. And a lot of things that the phenomena that we see in the world are really a representation of how the world really operates. I'm also, because I went through the spiritual awakening and then I went on the discovery of, I wanted to sort of answer these existential questions of life.
Yeah.
Who am I? What is this world all about? How does all this stuff work? And then I got into all the major ancient wisdom religions, the indigenous cultures, the Greek philosophers, the Stoics, you name it. I studied all of it. And eventually I realized I had, some medium type, some mystic type of capabilities. I was getting messages and channeling, and I channel book now. I became a certified medium as well. So this is where I'm a little bit of an odd duck, because I sort of play in the spiritual world, and then, but I come from this really, just the Western capitalist world and Wall Street, let's say. This book is sort of an expose. It's an expose of how the world really works. And that is a very raw and truthful story, which is hard to read and it's hard to reconcile because, we don't really want to believe that the world is that pathological. It's that psychotic.
Yeah.
But the purpose of writing this book and sort of laying it all out in this expose is to show people what's really going on, because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of anxiety in the world. Obviously, we're facing, savage wars. We're seeing pollution. We're seeing financial systems teetering on the edge. We're seeing, a lot of geopolitical conflict. And for a lot of people, it's, what's going on? Like it's so restless, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to provide a book that sort of gives an overview of the beauty that's underneath all of this. Because the later part of the book, the expose part is sort of like, yeah, it is pretty screwed up in the world. And this is why it looks like this. And this is sort of what it's all based on. And this is sort of the history of humanity over the last 2,000-3,000 years. And this is sort of what's created where we are today and what we're seeing in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
But then this is really where we're going. And we're sort of in this very, this is a beautiful time to be alive, because in my view and my experience, we're in a transition phase. We're sort of leaving a chapter and we're seeing the old sort of, dissipate and collapse and fall apart.
Yep.
But the new is being born. And the new is something that's going to be born from a much higher level of consciousness, from a very different level of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And that new sort of world that I call the world of wonder and beauty, and that is being born. But this process is very messy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we can have a view, and, imagine I have 3 kids. I witnessed, I know you're going to have a little one, and it's the most beautiful thing you can witness, especially as a father,
mm-hmm.
even though you feel really helpless in this, when the birth is taking place.
Mm-hmm.
But man, it's a messy process. I mean, there's pain, there's blood, there's, and when you're sort of in the middle of, witnessing this, right? And as a father, you can't do anything but hold your wife's hand and encourage her to keep pushing. You're looking at something that looks like, oh my God, this is a disaster. How can she ever get out of this? How can this kid come out alive? And then, there's this moment of euphoria where, when the kid first takes its breath and you hear its cry and then the baby is laid on the chest of the mother and there's this glow on the mother. And it's the most beautiful process in the world. Mm-hmm. And at that stage, you look back, you say, oh my God, this was the most beautiful thing I ever witnessed in my life.
Yeah.
But during the process, I mean, you fear, when you're praying to God, I hope this goes well.
Yeah.
And this is sort of where we are on a global cosmic level, right?
Really,
I mean, the world is going through this birthing process where the old, it has to go. Yeah. It's time for it to go. And the new is not quite there yet. So we can't really see yet. I mean, I think many of us have a feeling, there might be something better and more beautiful that is possible, that's maybe coming, but when is it coming? And when are we going to see it? And so this book, really, I wrote it so people can have an overview of where we are really and how can we witness this in sort of a form of equanimity. That doesn't mean that we bypass what's happening, because what's happening is real, right? Mm-hmm. But we sort of see like, okay, but I can see why this is necessary, why this has to fall apart, why this has to change, and why that change really has to come from us, right? Because when we change, the world changes.
For sure, yeah. Well, what do you think might be the biggest misconception people might have about your message from this book, and how would you clarify it, or how would you address that?
Well, I think the biggest misconception that people have is that things are the way they are and they're never going to change. Mm-hmm. And things have always changed. Yeah. Things are always changing, right? Sure. If you look back through history, and I'm a bit of a student of history and I have a political science degree as well. And, when you look at the Roman era, right? I mean, society doesn't look like that anymore. But during Roman times, I promise you, that was a couple 100 years of rule. Everybody thought this is never going to change.
Yeah.
But it does, right? And, in the thick of World War II, maybe occupied Europe would, many people would think this is never going to change. Mm-hmm. But then the war ended and it changed. Mm-hmm. So throughout history and even in our personal lives, right, we find ourselves in difficult and challenging situations. And this is just part of life because, we have these beautiful aspects of life. And then we also, each one of us experiences, forms of cruelty and hardship and things that go wrong, and our heart gets broken and we lose jobs or money, and, the people that we love, we have to bury them at some point. And so, we go through these trials and tribulations in life. Yeah. And when we're in the thick of it, oftentimes we think, like, oh, this is never going to change. This is never going to turn around. This is never going to be okay again. Mm-hmm. And guess what? It does, right? Because at some point it's in your rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. And then you sort of connect the dots, and then you can even start maybe seeing like, well, that had to sort of be like that because, I had to go through that terrible breakup and have all that pain. But then, I sort of worked on some things on myself, and then I found this other person. I'm actually much happier than I ever would have been in that old situation.
Sure.
But we can't really connect the dots except for
looking forward. Yeah. Right.
It's very, very difficult to kind of see that in the moment when we're experiencing it. We're emotional beings. Our emotions flares up. Our nervous system is tied to that. So, we have this knot in our stomach. We have all these different things that is signaling to us something is wrong. And these are also survival mechanisms. And they're real, but we can manage them, and we can understand them, and we can sort of navigate them. The more we can see sort of the big picture, right? The more we can see, okay, this is just a phase. The moment it's just a phase, right? Now you can see like, okay, there's hope. Because if it's just a phase, it's not permanent, then that means that at some point this is going to end, or this is going to change.
Yeah.
And, Viktor Frankl wrote about this and the meaning of life, I believe. But, he was a Holocaust in the Auschwitz. And he was describing that those people that lost hope would perish. And maybe they would die from pneumonia or being underfed or whatever. And he says the ones that had something to live for, had some little flicker of a light that they could hold on to, they could almost bear anything. And many of those survived.
Right, yeah.
And so hope is a big thing. And having something to live for, to see like there is going to be a better day, right? I mean, that sort of animates the will inside of us to live. And that propels us to, okay, well, one more step, one more day, one more breath. Yeah. Right. And sometimes we have to take it literally one breath at a time, because life is just crushing us in the moment. And it's just one breath at a time.
Yeah. Man, what would you say is your biggest hope and greatest fear for humans' future, of human?
I honestly don't fear much, because I believe that there's a far greater intelligence than our own little, we're all a little individual fractal of something that's much larger. And if you want to call that, Most High or Yahweh or Absolute or, Brahman, it doesn't matter what you call it.
Yeah.
In Christian traditions, we call that God, the creator, source, great spirit, indigenous traditions. It doesn't, these are just linguistic labels, right? But if you have the fundamental understanding that there is sort of a grand intelligence that is orchestrating all of that, and that grand intelligence, as Einstein said, one of the biggest decisions you make is that benevolent or malevolent, right? And so if you say, no, that's benevolent, well, now this intelligence is really orchestrating all of this. Right. And I might not understand all of it. I might not understand why there needs to be all this hardship in the world, all this suffering in the world. I can't explain it on an individual level, but on a grand epoch scale, I can see that humanity has been moving through epochs, and it has been evolving, and it has been advancing, and it has been sort of slowly but surely rising in consciousness. And we're getting further and further along on the technology curve, on the cultural and social curve. And there's many things that we, even 200-300 years ago, we were still burning people at the stake. Now we don't do that anymore. Well, most countries don't do that anymore, right? And so, humanity has evolved, and there has been a huge arc. It's just we're now coming to a stage where sort of, I believe, this epoch, that we're closing out an epoch, and we're going to make a leapfrog. We're going to literally, because it's either that or it's the sixth mass extinction, which is underway. Yeah. And this is the Anthropocene extinction. This is the human caused one. The five that came before were nature caused. And this one we know for sure is human caused. But because it's human caused, right? It's caused by humans. Yeah. It also means we have the power to change it. The five preceding mass extinctions, we had no power. Right? A meteorite hits Earth and annihilates all life on Earth for 10 million years. Humans have no power over that. But this one is in our power. But we have to change. Because what we're seeing in the world today is a representation of us collectively today.
Yeah, I agree. You talk a lot about spiritual crisis. It's not a political or economic or ecological crisis. Maybe frame what is spiritual crisis and why it's more important than anything.
And this is a fundamental concept that, on the earthly level, on the 3D level, in the reality that we experience as our everyday life, yes, there is an environmental crisis. Yes, there are political crises. There are wars. There's destruction. There's social crises. There's far too many people. There's 1 billion people that in famine, you know, I mean, they don't have enough to eat. So yes, we have, and this is called the quality crisis, right? Because this is really what we're facing. It's not sort of a singular thing that if we fix this one thing, then everything will be kumbaya. No, we have many of these crises. And this is what's called the quality crisis.
Yeah.
But we can't really change any of these things by moving the deck chairs around, you know, and regulate our way out of it, or just marginally sort of move away, because we're at the level of effects. Yeah. And so when I talk about we're in the meta crisis is a spiritual crisis, because all phenomena in our physical reality are a representation of what we, in Hermetic philosophy, we call the fundamental reality, which is the spiritual consciousness, right? Everything is originated from consciousness. We are consciousness expressed into biological form. And so we are co-creating this reality. Each 8 billion of us are co-creating it. And so is all the animals, and Mother Earth has their own consciousness, and the cosmos has its own consciousness. And so all phenomena that we see in sort of what we experience as our reality is really a surface level phenomena. Let's say the waves on the top of the ocean that come from the deep silent part of the ocean that we can't see. Now that deep silent part is basically a vast field of consciousness, which we are all connected to. We are all feeding into what we call the human morphogenetic field. And this is what's creating these surface level phenomena. And so when we look at particular politicians, like right now, Trump is a big name, right? And, you know, you could be pro and con, and it doesn't matter. He is an actor in this game at sort of from a spiritual perspective, from a higher level perspective. He's an antagonist in the story. Let's just see this whole thing as a simulation, as a movie, right? When you have Star Wars, right, you need a Darth Vader. That's a character. You need a Darth Vader so Luke Skywalker can go through his hero's journey, right? And the antagonist is necessary. The antagonist is showing us something. And so all major politicians and all dictators and all Hitlers and Stalins of the world, they showed us something. They showed us an aspect of ourselves, right? And in the case of Hitler after World War II, there was a massive change in Europe, because up until World War II, Europe had been in perpetual war for thousands of years. And Germany was invading France, and France was invading the UK, and Spanish were fighting with the Portuguese, and, you know, thousands of years of basically shifting borders as kingdoms, you know, came and went. After World War II, until this Ukraine war broke out, there was no war in Europe. And so the antagonist Hitler, right, had as sort of a cause that today it's unthinkable that France would declare war to Germany, or that Sweden is going to go to war with Norway. You know, it was only 80, 90 years ago that was commonplace. Up until World War II, up until 1940, Europe had known nothing different. And then it shifted, right? And so you can see Hitler was a horrendous dictator, and he did, you know, terrible things. There's no question about it. But in the big scheme of things, he was also an antagonist that showed us something. Genghis Khan showed us something, you know, all the Roman emperors, you know, all the big figures in life. And then we have, obviously, people like MLK and Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, and they showed us something too, right? There are archetypes as well, where if you think about the story of Nelson Mandela, what did he show us? He was a protester, and, you know, he actually sort of used violence in his early career, right? And he went to prison for 27 years. I visited his prison cell on Robben Island in Cape Town. And when you just sit there and you're like 27 years, and this man came out with his heart wide open. And then he worked with the clerk, and when he came out of prison, he stayed out of the political system for a year, you know, laying the foundation, because he said, if I come out too early, it would be too radical. And so they worked on a transition plan, and then obviously, you know, he transitioned, but he is also showing us something what's possible. Like, where do you find the strength? Where do you find the compassion and the love for Nelson Mandela? So that's possible too, right? You know, an MLK, someone from the deep South that knew nothing but racism, and he talked about love and brotherhood. So every sort of public figure that we see in the political arena or sort of in a larger stage, they're actors showing us something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in a different era where there's a different level of consciousness, a Trump would not be elected.
Right.
A Stalin would not rise to power. A Hitler would not rise to power.
Yeah, I've always had this intuition that those Hitlers and Stalins of the world, they are just the kind of the manifestation of the particular energy that needed to come out. But then, do you think if Hitler wasn't born during that time, there would be another Hitler type carrying his energy?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think there's I think the entire cosmos is an intelligent play.
Yeah.
And so would it have been exactly like Hitler? I don't know. But would have been a like-kind figure? Probably, because humanity needed to learn a lesson and needed to see something. And we're seeing things in the world today, right? A very controversial subject, but there's a massive conflict in the Middle East. And it's showing us something, and it's showing us a very brutal lesson that we haven't learned that much, right? And we're seeing the same thing in the Ukraine, and we're seeing the same thing geopolitically around, some of these imperialist and expansionist ideas that, the superpowers still have, China, America, Russia. So, we're seeing phenomena that are really just representations of old beliefs, old thoughts. And, I believe we're growing out of this.
Yeah.
Because we're seeing that, the future of sort of a continuation along these lines is sort of an extinction for all humanity. It's not going to end up well, right? Because now we have 5, I think it's 7 countries that have nuclear weapons in some form or another. When there's a nuclear attack that is originated by one of these countries, the other countries have like 30 seconds to decide, right? Do we counterattack or not? And it's a very, very volatile situation.
Yeah.
And sort of when you look at humanity today, we don't really have the consciousness, right, to hold weapons of mass destruction like this. And there shouldn't even be weapons like this, and nuclear technology should have never been weaponized. That's another question, right? Why are we weaponizing this? Why are we not putting it to better use?
Yeah.
Why are we, Buckminster Fuller talks about, humanity is creating all the right technologies for all the wrong reasons. He was saying this 50 years ago, right? So these are sort of the lessons that we're being confronted with. And how we're being confronted with? Well, look at the world. Look at the news. Turn the news on. Look at the suffering we're seeing. Look at the bloodshed, the annihilation of people, the ethnic cleansing, the atrocious killing that's taking place, the pollution that's happening in the planet, the inequalities that are emerging from our economic system, and it's sort of designed into the system because we adhere sort of to this religion of money, and we sort of idolizing this capitalism, but it has clearly massive flaws, and where it doesn't really work the way we portray it to work, and it leaves a lot of losers, and that is not sustainable. This is not how nature works, right? Nature doesn't have sort of this massive outcasts that are just losers in the system.
Yeah. The word crucible, I had to kind of look it up. Would you say it's a common word in America, in English language?
I don't know if it's a common word, but I think it's a beautiful word because I think a crucible sort of signifies this junction, this fork in the road, right?
Yeah.
And so whenever we face a crucible, it's like we got a big decision to make, right? Are we going to take a left or are we going to take a right? And I do think that we're collectively and individually, as mankind, we're at this crucible. We are each, and we each only have the power to change ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And this is kind of the core thing. So when we talk about spiritual starvation, and a meta crisis is really a spiritual crisis.
Yeah.
So that plays out at a collective level because we're all connected in this morphogenetic field. And, all of us are creating this reality, all 8 billion of us, and some of us have a greater influence and impact on it than others. But all 8 billion of us are creating this reality that we experience as the world today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, none of us could change everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
We can only change ourselves, right? But we have 100% of the power to change ourselves.
Yeah.
We have 100% of the power to choose to come from love and compassion and nobility and integrity and, to sort of, purify ourselves, to step away from greed, from all these sort of, lower nature proclivities that humanity has always shown.
Yeah.
And sort of rise above that.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that's possible because we know we have many people and many teachers and many wisdom keepers that have shown us, there's been many, many examples of people that have sort of risen above, right? And we know what it looks like and we know it's possible. Mm-hmm. So if it's possible for one person, it's possible for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we do individually have to make this choice. The world is facing a crucible and each one of us individually is facing the same crucible. We have to make this choice. Like, how do I want to participate in the creation of this world?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm about to turn 54 and I have 3 kids. And for me, what's become really important, what sort of like drives me is like, this is not the world I want to leave my kids. My game is sort of over, I had fun and I played and I made a lot of money and I lost a lot of money and I'll still continue to sort of, create and play and do some things, but I'm not really here anymore to get accolades or status. I don't really care about titles anymore. It's sort of, not that I'm beyond it, but I sort of played the game and it was fun. Got the t-shirt, I'm good.
Yeah.
But I look at the world today and I'm like, this is not what I want to leave my kids. Okay. And I believe in a world of wonder and beauty. And I believe in the potential, the capacity of human beings. Mm-hmm. I believe we all have access to that. I believe there's certain, rites of passage that we have to go through. We have to purify ourselves and not in sort of a religious doctrine way. Mm-hmm. This is literally just, live in the golden rule. People ask me, how do you become spiritual? I could condense it into one rule. And it's in every major wisdom tradition, by the way. Mm. Now, there's a lot more you can do. And we each carry some wounds inside of us. And we each have hate and anger. And, you only have to look on social media and you see the comments that people are posting. And there's so much anger and hate and rancor. And, I just drove here in Miami. It's pretty busy with traffic. And, people are horning and throwing you the bird. And it's like, these are all sort of very, violent expressions. Yeah. That we each have inside of us, but we also each inside of us have sort of this higher nature. Mm-hmm. This exalted nature, right? Mm-hmm. But we have to actually live it, embody it. Mm-hmm. We have to choose it. Mm-hmm. We have to choose to be loved. We have to choose to be compassionate. We have to choose to care. Mm-hmm. We have to choose to be polite and respectful, even when we don't understand other people. And maybe we don't agree with that, right? But we can still see them as a beautiful human being that has an equal right to live and an equal right to dignity and an equal right to and they all want the same thing I want. What do we all want? We all want to be happy. We all want to, have people around us. We want to feel safe. We want to, have some means to take care of ourselves and our family and experience life. And we want to be happy, mm-hmm. right? And this is no different, no matter what religion you're born into, what country, what culture. And so I think we're removing is sort of this understanding, like, 8 billion people are not going to agree on everything, but we can agree that life is sacred, right? And that everybody is worthy. Yeah. Everybody should be treated with dignity. Everybody has the right to live, to eat, to have some, the ability, the opportunity to create a beautiful life for themselves. That doesn't mean that this life should be given to you, but you should have the full opportunity to create a beautiful life for yourself, for your family, and express yourself and bring your gifts and superpowers into the world. Because we're all born with gifts and superpowers, and it's a mosaic of humanity. We're all a little puzzle piece, and we're all a little unique, and none of us are ever going to be the same, but we're not supposed to be the same. Nature thrives on diversity, not on homogeneous forms, right? Nature is always exploring uniqueness. And, the world that we live in sort of wants you to fit in a box. We're not supposed to fit in a box. We're supposed to sort of celebrate our unique representation of this greater intelligence.
100%, man. Yeah. What would you say is the biggest kind of illusion that humanity is facing, and what are the dangers to have that type of illusion?
Well, the biggest illusion is that, like I said, the world is fixed, and this is just the way it is. And there's many things that we believe in, and these are just theories. These are doctrines, right? We have a doctrine of capitalism, of economic theory. That's a theory. We believe in fiat currency. It only exists because we believe in it, right? There's many people that are very righteous about their religion, and religion is just a theory, right? And it doesn't mean that religion cannot be beautiful, and that it can, and it certainly doesn't mean that you don't have the right to practice what you believe in and what you culturally grow up with, but it doesn't mean that is the end-all truth of everything, right? And other people might hold different truths, right? And when you actually sit down with a Christian and a Muslim and a Jew and someone from the Vedic traditions and a Buddhist, and we ask them some of the fundamental questions about life, I promise you for 95%, they're all going to answer the same. All these religions are actually pointing at the same fact. Right. But, when we get righteous about it, when we sort of start entitling ourselves that we are somehow superior to someone else, right? Because of our religion, because culturally, because of the country we were born into, like a country is a fiction, right? I mean, these, you zoom out far enough from Earth, there's no borders. We made these borders up.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean there shouldn't be borders. I'm just saying, like, you got to have a little bit of levity in all these things that we believe are fixed, that are like, I'm an American and this is that. And, so every Iranian is now my enemy. Most Iranian people are, the Persian culture is a very rich, beautiful culture. And they have a very oppressive government, and there's many different things in that country that are not that great. But have you been in LA lately and seen the homeless camps? You think that's beautiful, right? I mean, we can look at ourselves as well and say, okay, other countries have a lot of issues, but we're not peachy clean, right? We got a lot of problems. We still have racial problems. We still have certain fractions of our citizenship that just simply doesn't have the same opportunities that other people have. And by law, they might have it, but culturally they don't, or socially they don't. There's still a lot of people losing out in the United States, and there's still a lot of people losing out in Europe. And so the belief that all these things are fixed, right? This is sort of where we need to zoom out a little bit. And, this is a transition, I believe, and I write about it, from human law to natural law, right? We need to start looking more, okay, well, how does nature actually work? Because those are the laws of the cosmos, right? Those are actually the immutable laws. The human laws are just the ones we make up. And these are just theories and doctrines and then when we believe them, they become real. But, at one point, we believed that, aristocracy was real, right? And there's still kingdoms in the world, and that's fine, but no human being is born any different than anybody else, right? There is no blue blood. That doesn't exist. We all have red blood. And so, there's many of these concepts that when we put our belief in it collectively, then they come into existence. But they're very malleable.
Yeah.
But we have to be willing to look at them. And this is one of the things that I do in this book. I sort of highlight a lot of these things where we have created false gods, right?
Yeah.
And when we can start seeing that for what it is, and we can create a little bit of distance, we say, okay, well, what are the fundamental laws of this universe? How does actually nature regenerate itself, right? Because we're part of nature. We're just an expression of it. So I think the illusion is that all the things we believe in are fixed.
Exactly.
We have to challenge all of it.
Yeah. And the separateness, I think, that we're like separate. We're all part of the same organism, the same systems. And of course, we think that it's all, as you said, like cut in pieces. There are like clear breaks between things, like boundaries.
Yeah. And when you go into quantum physics, I mean, you don't even have to go to religious route or spiritual route. Just go to the science route.
Yeah.
And you go to the work of Niels Bohr, or you go to David Bohm or Einstein, and you go deep enough in quantum physics, it's just all one big soup of consciousness, or quantum field as they call it. And we know the Biggs boson particle, and we know it's all particles. We know it's all connected. We know all the ether is connected.
Yeah.
We know that there's entangled atoms that they can be across the entire universe, right? And defy basically the speed of light, because they move at the same time. So we know everything is connected. And right now, as I'm exhaling my breath right here, right, and you are inhaling it, I mean, we are more connected than we know. And I have carbons in my body, right, that were halfway across the world, 3 days ago. So, we're exchanging with everything. We're exchanging with nature. We're exchanging with the ether, with, every single sentient being, but every piece of rock, even, the big rock called planet Earth. I mean, there's an interchange going on there as well.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think transcending consciousness is crucial right now, and why can we solve the existing problems with?
Well, not transcending consciousness, right? You can't transcend consciousness. Consciousness is the fundamental reality. Transcending psychosis.
Psychosis, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so psychosis, what is psychosis, right? And psychosis is basically, we have a limited belief or a false belief, right? And we're acting on that. And this is a form of psychosis. And I go very deeply into the book. I mean, what are all these forms of psychosis? Well, we believe in all these false gods. We believe in all these, that all these things are real, but we believe we're separated. We believe that, just because I'm born in this country and to this sort of lineage, I'm better than that person, or I'm more worthy than that person, or because I'm financially successful, I am a more important person than someone that might be homeless in the street.
Yeah,
So we have all these concepts, and these are all forms of psychosis. Now, when you think about how we live, right? Here in the United States, I think 60-70% of the population is on at least 3 medications. We get symptoms because we eat unhealthy foods, we live unhealthy lifestyles, we have way too much stress, we have an enormous amount of environmental contamination through our food, through the glyphosate, the pesticides. If you sort of take a little bit of a step back, you say this is complete madness. Yeah. This is psychosis, right? Because we engage in all these different things that we actually know makes us sick. And then we come up with all these synthetic solutions to sort of pacify the symptoms because we feel like shit.
Yeah.
So we show up at the doctor at 40 years old and we say, well, doctor, fix me, give me a pill. But nobody talks about the 40 years of abuse of the body, right? Because we know all the things that we're doing and we're still doing it, right? We have single-use plastic, and we have a massive plastic problem in the oceans. And these plastics are now going into our food chain because it's in the fish and we actually eat it. And now we have, microplastics in our body. Well, if you look back and you say, well, this is a form of psychosis. Because if you think about intelligence, and I go, there's a chapter dedicated to that. So what's intelligence, right? So we equate intelligence with IQ. or I can solve a very difficult math problem. I'm very smart. But that's not how the universe looks at it. So intelligence in the way the universe looks at it creates by definition intelligent outcomes. And an intelligent outcome by definition is life affirming, is conducive to life itself. It's something that produces health, happiness, regeneration, all those things, right?
Yeah.
Now, an unintelligence, right, produces unintelligent outcomes, which is basically anti-life or not conducive to life itself. So when you're chopping down, the lungs of the earth in the Amazon, right, and you're trying to monetize that wood or create agricultural land, and you flush all these glyphosate and pesticides through the Mississippi Delta. You have a dead zone the size of New England in the Gulf of Mexico. You have all these single-use plastics. You're addicted to sort of this consumerism or throwaway garbage. You have fast food chains that are peddling basically illness.
Yeah.
These are all unintelligent outcomes. Now, if you've ever visited a war zone, or even just, looked at documentaries or even witnessed the news today, this is highly unintelligent. It is massively destructive, right? There's a tragic loss of life, of property. On all levels, war is unintelligent. Yet we keep doing it, right? And why? Because we're fighting over resources. We're fighting over, borders that are sort of, these are fictional lines on a map. We're fighting over religion, dogma, doctrines, you call it.
Yep.
These are all highly unintelligent things that we're doing, right? And we're, Mother Earth is this very delicate system that has an enormous capacity to regenerate herself.
Yeah.
But you can also sicken her. And we've been doing this on an industrial scale for the last 200-300 years. Since sort of the 1700s, when we started inventing the steam machine. And, before that, we could only do limited damage because we just had limited means, to really affect her on the grand scale but, with the Industrial Revolution sort of came this ability to really damage her on a grand scale and chronically. And so we're looking at 200-300 years of chronically damaging all her fundamental systems, and it's a living system. And so everything is tethered and connected to each other in nature. And so if you overfish one fish stock in the ocean, you're going to collapse the entire food chain in the ocean. And that has a cascading effect on the corals, on the acidity levels, and, God knows what.
Yep.
If you take the forest down in the Amazon, you're disrupting entire patterns of animals, of life-giving nature. The Amazon River has changed. Rain patterns are changed, and not just rain patterns in the Amazon. You're changing rain and weather patterns around the world. Sure. Now, we've been doing this for hundreds of years, but really the last 80, 90 years, we've just accelerated this. These are all forms of unintelligence, even though we believe we're very smart, because now we figured out. I saw a little reel the other day. We invented this machine that can chop down a massive tree in literally 45 seconds. It was a tractor that drives up to the tree, and it cuts and the tree's gone. That used to take, two guys 4 hours.
Yeah.
So we mechanized that which we shouldn't be doing, so we can do more of it. That's not intelligence, right? And so we have to really take a step back and say, okay, what is intelligence? Intelligent is defined by intelligent outcomes, which is always life affirming. And that might not be in the capitalist system the most profitable thing to do, right? So maybe we need to grow food that has higher nutritional value. And maybe that food will cost a little bit more to grow, and maybe it's a little bit more expensive in the supermarket. But we have a $4 or $5 trillion health industry today, right? It's not health, and they're peddling illness. And so, your food has gotten cheaper, but your medical cost has exploded.
Yeah,
right. But we view this as good because it's good business. Some people are making a lot of money on this. There's big industries like the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical complex, the, industrial food complex.
Yeah.
They make money on these things. And so then the stock market does well and, we sort of all cheering, but it's highly unintelligent, highly unintelligent. And these are some of the things that need to be revisited. And it doesn't mean that we need to go, there's not going to be an economy anymore.
Yeah.
It's just, we should be doing things that are conducive to life. If we want to create happiness, we want to create a thriving humanity the world over and within the limits of Mother Earth, because, she does have finite limits. It's a finite planet that has a finite ability to regenerate herself. And so we have to sort of live within those confines. And today we're using 5 times more resources than she can regenerate annually. We deplete her somewhere by July. It's called the Earth Footprint Day. Somewhere by July, we have depleted all the natural resources globally that she can replenish that year. So the rest of the year, it's a deficit. And we've been doing this for decades, right? Highly unintelligent.
Yeah. Why, over the centuries, humans haven't learned the mistakes? Like, why are we still making the same mistakes even though we know better?
Well, we have learned a lot. And we have advanced a lot, and we solved a lot of illnesses, and we have advanced society in many meaningful ways. I mean, life wasn't a fairy tale 500 years ago. The average expectancy was probably 30 years old, and now people are growing 60, 70, 80 years old easily, right? In the Western world, anyway. So it isn't that we haven't evolved. It's just that we have created a lot of technology. We created a lot of systems. We created capitalist theories and ideas. And we sort of, became wed with this idea that to create this happiness, we have to create this in the outer world by things we can consume, things we can own, things we can have. So, if I have a bigger house and a bigger car and more TVs and more this and more gambling and more of everything, right? Then at some point I'm going to saturate myself and be happy. Well, what we can see in the Western societies today, right, where the suicide rates are at all-time highest, depression rates are through the roof, illness, chronic illness, drug addiction, alcoholism, the abuse of weed, of drugs, of gambling. I mean, these are not healthy expressions. This is not the signs of a healthy humanity or a healthy society, right? This is psychosis to think that this is a healthy way of living. And yet we're sort of holding on to it because there's many companies that make money this way. Right. And it's actually a very dystopian world, a very unhealthy world. The obesity rates, the diabetes, and it's tragic because I go to the supermarket and you look at someone's little basket and what they're shopping. And then you look at the person behind it and it's like, it's an immediate reflection, and I'm not judging them. I'm just saying that, why are we peddling these products? Why are we putting food in the supermarket that has no nutritional value? Why are we putting all these GMOs in the food that we know disrupts our biome? And, we're going to cause diabetes and asthma and all these different diseases that, this is not intelligent. This is not a way. And we're not thriving in that we're that happy. And I know because I pursued this path with a vengeance. And, when you make your first $10,000, you think, when I make my 10 grand, I'll be great. And then you want 50 and then you want 100. And then you have your first house, you want a second house. And then you have this beautiful car. And 2 months later, you dreamed about this car, right? And you went to the dealership 3 times, and you had the brochure and you saved money. And then you go pick it up and you're so happy and you're showing it to all your family, your friends. And 2 months later, it's just a car that takes you from A to B. And you're like, I kind of want a next model, right? They're coming out, next year they're coming out with even a bigger engine or whatever. And so we get lost in seeking the satisfaction in the outside world. Now, I'm not someone to say that we should just abandon all of that. No, I mean, we can enjoy all these things. We can have a beautiful house. I love architecture and art and beauty, and you can have a beautiful car. But that is never going to fill the fundamental void that we each have inside of us, right? The fundamental desire is to feel purpose and a fulfillment and a depth of life. And we find that in doing something that is sort of aligned with our dharma, that we feel is aligned with our mission in life, with our purpose, with our talents, with our gifts, because we want to express ourselves. We're creative human beings. We want to have friendships and love relationships and families. I mean, this is a huge source of depth. But we've been annihilating the family, and we've been sort of, divorce rates in the 50, 60%. And, we want to experience nature. I mean, we work a whole year for 2 weeks to go, camping. Why wouldn't we engineer our life in a way where we experience nature more, but also preserve it better?
Yeah.
So it's more accessible for everybody. So this is really where I think the world is going. It's not that we're not going to have an economy anymore. We're not going to, pursue things anymore. We're not going to have technology anymore. No, I mean, these things can all beautify our life. But when it starts to own us, right, we end up sort of in this very rich prison, which is a very, it's sort of an illness asylum. You look at society today, go through the airport, walk through the airport, right? It's tragic. It's tragic, the amount of illness, the people that need double belts, and again, I'm not judging it. It's just, they're very ill. Okay. People that have medicine for diabetes, most diabetes is curable, right? Even in late stage, right? These are diet related, lifestyle related, stress, heart attacks, people that need stents, people that, like I said, asthma, skin issues, because we have all these dermatology and all these beauty products that are actually very unhealthy for us.
For sure.
Right? The largest organ that we have.
Definitely. Give me one second.
I like little products some eggs. Achilles.
Right, Ben Rurowen, your wealth of knowledge, I tell it out.
I wanted to ask you about intelligence.
Let me take a sip.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel great.
In flow? Yeah. Intelligence. How would you define intelligence, especially now?
Well, I just did.
It's a buzzword of like artificial intelligence in general. Because artificial intelligence is not what you're talking about.
Well, I go very deep into in the book on artificial intelligence. So what is artificial intelligence really? It's really computing power. Right. That's really what we're talking about. And when we talk about computing power, there's a couple of things about artificial intelligence that our innate intelligence that humans have, that we have access to, is emergent intelligence.
Yeah.
That emerges from a field that is intelligent, because we are an expression of this field. We are sentient. We can feel. We have intuition. We have many other things that, artificial intelligence, you can't program for that.
Yeah.
So it's never going to have that. Now, what artificial intelligence can do that is beyond sort of the processing capability of our limited mind, our finite mind, is it can access a vast reservoir of information, let's say everything ever written in humanity, right, across, thousands of years, and it can access that in a way, at a speed and compute that, that is incomparable to what we could ever do, because we couldn't even possibly read all that information in our lifetime if we tried. Right. So it does have a processing advantage. But guess what? Everything that it accesses, every piece of information it accesses, right, is originally created by human intelligence. Because all these books, all these ideas, all these theories, all these concepts. And so artificial intelligence is really a reflection of human consciousness. And so if you think about intelligence is very directly correlated with awareness. And awareness is sort of an aperture. And so if you think about, that someone that has a very low level of consciousness, their aperture is sort of really closed. They see a very narrow sliver of reality. And they have very limited understanding of it. Now, when you think about someone that is very evolved in consciousness-wise, and maybe the great teachers and wisdom keepers of the world, the mystics, the sages, they had a very opened up awareness. Think about a Buddha, that just he saw all reality for what it was, right? The aperture of awareness was wide open. Well, when that aperture of awareness opens up, your access to true intelligence opens up. Your understanding of life itself, what's going on in the cosmos, right? And, there's indigenous cultures, like the Mayan culture. They knew things that were going on in the universe, even though they didn't have the technology to look at these stars. They didn't look, and they could calculate, where planets were going, where all these things.
Yeah.
And so their aperture of awareness during that time of that civilization was actually quite open. And we knew this from the Egyptians, we knew this from the Essenes, there's been many civilizations, the Vedic, Ayurvedic medicine, they knew stuff about energy and the chakra system that, we in Western medicine, we still don't understand it. We still haven't incorporated it. They knew this 7,000 years ago. So intelligence is a function of aperture, opening up this aperture. And then we rise in consciousness and we have a higher level of intelligence. And then when human intelligence rises, right, artificial intelligence actually gets access to higher consciousness. And so artificial intelligence at the level of consciousness that humanity is today is quite dangerous, because we're basically adding computing power to what is creating the world as it looks today. So we're giving it more mechanized power, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we would rise to a higher level of collective consciousness in humanity, which is, I believe, the process that's happening, then artificial intelligence will actually provide us the mechanistic computing power to accelerate all the solutions we need. To accelerate the solutions, because there are alternatives for plastic and single-use plastic, and there's alternatives for all the synthetic medicines that we have. We can find it in nature, and we could do the DNA sequencing through artificial intelligence. We could have never done that manually, computerly, and so artificial intelligence used intelligently, right, which is a function of human consciousness, is going to be something that accelerates sort of this creation of this world of wonder and beauty. So artificial intelligence itself is neutral, in my view. At the current level of consciousness is very dangerous, especially because of the sort of technocratic mindset that is creating this artificial intelligence. These are, for the most part, not the people at the very highest levels of human consciousness in the world today. And they have certain, surveillance state sort of control mechanisms that they're trying to create through artificial intelligence, and that can be very dangerous. That can create a sort of Orwellian world that none of us would want to see. And just read 1984 and you'll get an idea of what that looks like. Now, at the same time, when you have this item of transhumanism, well, what are they really after, right? And so why would you want to do transhumanism? Well, there's a couple of things that AI doesn't have and you can't program for it. One is it does not have an autonomous power source. It is plugged into the grid, and it needs a lot of power. Now, a human avatar, a biosuit, our body has chi, has prana, has life force. We are an autonomous electrical unit. And as long as this consciousness and its life force is animating the body, basically, there is autonomous life force, right? The other thing is that we are sentient. So we are connected to a higher intelligence. We are also, we have the ability to feel, to sense, to intuit. This is not something you can program for, because that's not where that comes from. This is not some code you write and then you become intuitive. And obviously, the more we rise in consciousness as human beings, this is our heart portal, where we, Heart Math Institute has done a lot of research around that. There's a lot of neurons around our heart, and our heart has this ability, for our crown chakra to basically tap into universal intelligence. And this is how people channel and get intuition and precognitions and all this stuff. And, whether people have cultivated that a lot or not, that depends on the person. But everybody has the hardware to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So transhumanism is basically getting a chip, a neural link or something like that, get AI plugged into this bioavatar that solves the autonomous power function and solves the sentience problem, which you cannot program for. And now we as humans become basically, controlled and roboticized. We become cyborgs. Now, some people think that that is a beautiful future because that would make every human being highly programmable. You can program all the good behaviors you want, the bad behaviors, you cut them out.
Yep.
You can make everybody very docile and domesticated, and you sort of can regulate everything because you can basically do whatever you want through that neural connection.
Yeah.
I believe that, I believe in soulfulness because that is a soulless future, right?
Yeah.
Where you have a lot of cyborgs sort of, half human, half artificial intelligence, it's programmed and controlled by someone outside, external to you. And that is sort of hijacked, this is the transhumanist movement, right? I mean, they sort of hijack your avatar. That is a soulless future. I believe in soulfulness. I believe that we are all a divine expression of something far greater than any one of us.
Yeah.
That wants to live through us, through the uniqueness that we each have, and we are each an expression of this divinity. And the realization that we are that is the moment you fully realize that, you realize that everybody else also is divine in nature. And that moment of realization is where separation starts to dissipate. Because now, if I say, well, I'm divine nature, and if everything is created by this higher intelligence, then you must be a higher nature as well, right? You must be an expression of that as well. So what could make me separate from you, and what could make me better than you? What could make me better than that animal or that ocean or that planet or anything like this, right? And so this realization of soulfulness is really beautiful because now we can be unique and we can respect the dignity and the sanctity of life and everything else. And now with that understanding, you're going to take different care of the planet. You're going to take different care of your body. You're going to take different care of your immediate surroundings and how you sort of interact with the world. And you're going to have a very different view on it. Even people that live halfway across the world that you don't really understand, maybe their religion or their background or their culture, or it doesn't matter. You're still going to recognize them first and foremost as they have the same fundamental essence that I have, right?
Yeah.
And so they have the same rights I have. They have the same right to a dignified life, the same right to, pursue their happiness. And this is sort of where the golden rule is to me the most profound rule that we can live by because it sort of sums it all up. A 5-year-old can understand the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you wish to be done unto you.
Yeah.
If today 8 billion people woke up in the morning and decided to live by the golden rule, the world would fundamentally shift on its axis, like overnight. Because you could not have a war. You could not have the atrocities. You could not have the greed. You could not, sort of applaud yourself as the successful businessman, but your company is peddling stuff that's making people ill or sick, or, you're stealing from people, or you're creating, weapons of mass destruction, all these things. I mean, the moment you have this realization, you sort of snap out of this illusion like, oh my God, what am I doing? Right?
Yeah.
And how do I want to live?
For sure. Wow, this was a long answer, man. Yeah. No, it's good. Like you give a very comprehensive, I guess, answer. Long is not bad. It's more comprehensive. I did want to stay a little bit more on the topic because it is very relevant. Technology and tech and AI and all and intelligence and those things. If you don't mind, I think that's an important one to stay. And I'm also well versed in those topics. So let me better understand. So when you were saying about intelligence, is basically a true intelligence is your ability to connect to the matrix of everything, basically of the information. It's not that you're coming up with new information, you're bringing it into this reality, and that's what defines how intelligent in a way you are, would you say?
Yeah, right.
That
I answered it before, right? I think your
the aperture you're saying, like it's related to your awareness.
the way to look at intelligence, right? There's such a thing as intellect.
Yeah.
Intellect is sort of this raw ability to process data, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that you're processing it in an intelligent way.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean you're doing things that are wise,
Mm-hmm.
right? Wisdom is a completely different thing than intellect.
Yeah.
Intelligence is by definition creates intelligent outcomes. You have to look at the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And what is an intelligent outcome? That is anything that's conducive to life itself.
Okay.
It's life affirming.
Sure.
So when you create a company or a business or, an industrial, and you're creating massive pollution and you're making people ill,
Yeah.
These are not intelligent outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you're using your intellect to create this business, and maybe from a marketing perspective, it's very savvy and you created this valuable brand, and maybe in the stock market, you're doing great. And, maybe from a CEO perspective, you're on the cover of the Fortune magazine.
Yeah.
But the way the universe,
Mm-hmm.
looks at this, the cosmos looks at this is not intelligent
Mm-hmm.
because it's not life affirming,
Yeah.
right? When we look at the industrial food system in America,
Mm-hmm.
this is highly unintelligent because we're making everybody sick.
Understand. Yeah.
And so intelligence is more, it should be measured. It should be looked upon by what it creates, right?
Understand. Yeah.
That's what defines intelligence.
Yep.
Intellect is just the ability to process data.
Sure. So then you're saying anything that happened pre-humans, by definition is intelligent, because it was just nature up until us, basically. And then after humans, some things are intelligent and some things are not. Would you say that?
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it that way. I don't think it's that relevant for where we are here today. What happened, the first billion years of life on Earth. But yeah, in a grand scheme of things, right? The entire universe is intelligent. So everything that's happening, it's complete unfolding over what we believe is 13.8 billion years, and that we are aware of, right? All of that is occurring in an intelligent way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we look at fragments of it, and this is the problem of reductionism, right? You have to look at it holistically. If you look at something from a reductionist lens and you just look at the small slice of it, you might say, well, this is not very intelligent.
Yeah, yeah.
Why is Earth, let's say that there's a massive hurricane, right? Or let's do, one of the massive extinctions, right? I don't know which one it was, but there was a meteorite, wiped out the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
There was a dust cloud.
Kali Yuga, or is that part of that? Or no, yeah. Kali Yuga or something? No,
that's a different concept.
No.
But there was the extinction of the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's believed to have been a meteorite that basically hit Earth, that caused a volcano and ash that basically covered the sun, and practically everything died. A few little mammals and some seeds kind of buried under the Earth, and it took, I don't know, hundreds of thousands or millions of years, and then life. But then when life came back, it came back more diverse. It came back stronger, greener, and Earth had changed. The atmosphere had changed.
Yeah.
And so all these processes were taking place. Now, if you look just at the meteorite part, right, and that fragment in time, then you could say, well, the cosmos is dumb as a box of rocks. I mean, why would it destruct its own planet?
Sure. Yeah.
But then when you look at it holistically, you say, well, without that meteorite, without that transformation that the Earth went through millions of years, all these other life forms that came later would have never existed.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we look at the world today, and as messy as it is, there are some beautiful souls on the earth today that are very, very advanced in sort of projecting what the future might look like. And, one of the things I describe is this climate hoax, because it's really ecocide that we're dealing with. It's not just a CO2 issue. CO2 is not an issue at all. That's plant food.
Mm-hmm.
It could very well be that these heightened levels of CO2 is actually what's going to save us. Because if you want to regreen the earth, which is desperately needed, we need to regrow, we need to green the Sahara Desert. There's desertification going around the world that is affecting rain patterns, water cycles, carbon cycles, everything. Well, if you want to regreen, you need plant food.
Yeah.
And what is plant food? CO2. And so it could very well be that this sort of excess that we're concerned about in CO2 is actually the reservoir of plant food that we need to regreen the earth. And we might actually, in our lifetime, in 20 or 30 years, and there's people that are much more educated than me about this, that could say that we could see vast swaths of the Sahara greening again. Because at some point in the far distant past, that was all green.
They're starting to. I think I've seen projects that they're starting to.
Yeah, and China has done actually
exactly.
interesting things on a very large scale, over hundreds of miles, and kind of reclaiming desert and sort of advancing some of those tree planting efforts. And so, this is another thing. It's like, we're looking at CO2 and we think that's the problem, and it might not actually be the problem, right?
Which means that what we thought unintelligent that created all of this crisis, catastrophe, at the end might end up being the most intelligent thing, or just as intelligent as the meteor that destroyed, what I mean?
Of course, there's poetry in everything. There's poetry in this grand odyssey that we go through individually, and the grand odyssey that the whole universe is going through. And, the birth of galaxies and there's so many things that are unexplained to us. And the universe, every year now, there's information coming out how much bigger the universe is than we ever thought it was. Like, we can't even fathom how many trillions of stars and how many galaxies there are. And so, and all of this is sort of being orchestrated by some intelligence, right? It's not random. There's no flukes. There's something that is orchestrating all this, and it's too fast for us, vast for us to understand with our finite mind how some sort of like Godhead could be organizing all of this, right? And I believe it is. But we are an individual, a fractal of that Godhead, and we do have some autonomy, right? Some free will in how we participate in this, little earth thing. And, we're here for 70 or 80 years, which on the scope of planet Earth is nothing. And we're a speck of stardust, each one of it individually. Now, we're both magnanimously important, and then we're completely irrelevant, because when you and I die tomorrow, this Earth is going to keep going, right? And everything that we're concerned about today, 100 years from now, practically nobody's going to remember. And so everything we do in our life, everything is a sandcastle that the cosmic ocean of time is going to wipe away. And yet there's meaning and purpose in it, because how we do these sandcastles and how we built those, whether those sandcastles are businesses or the way we show up for world in our family as a husband or wife, or as a father or a mother, or, all these different roles we have in life. It does have meaning and it does have purpose, because when we do it in a different way, then our collective experience of reality is different, right? And so there is sort of this process where we've gone through, let's say a very dark phase, and we sort of see the end stage of that. And there's an opportunity. There's a crucible now. There's a choice to be made. Like, okay, we know what that looks like now. And we can make different choices. There's enough awareness and consciousness available in humanity today. We have all the technology that we need to make the changes. We have alternative products for everything that makes us sick. We have an alternative product for or technology available.
Right.
We know biodynamic farming and regenerative farming, and we know industrial farming, and we know It's even more profitable to do regenerative farming, right? We know all these things. We know how the human biome works now. We know glyphosate makes us sick. I mean, Monsanto loses lawsuits left and right, but they price it into the glyphosate price. It's just the cost of doing business. That's highly unintelligent, right?
Yeah.
And so the question for us as humans is, okay, do we want to create a different world? And if we do, that means that we each individually are going to have to make some different choices, right? And maybe live in a different way and express ourselves in a different way. And, and this is, I think it's a beautiful process. I think it's for us to witness this sort of transition phase of humanity, of Earth, where we are, and to see what's going to be possible to be born, I think it's just phenomenal. And yeah, it's very difficult to witness what's happening in the world today. But when you have this vision that, maybe it's just all collapsing, maybe it's all just coming apart, maybe it's just showing the most extreme versions. What happens a lot when people get very ill, they sort of have to go to the edge, and then they change their lifestyle, and then they stop smoking, and then they stop drinking. I have many different people I've met, especially through the spiritual work, that have gone to AA, and usually it takes them 4, 5, 6 rounds starts, and then they kind of fall off the wagon and they go back. And then there's usually a moment in their sort of a crucible in their life where it's sort of the final choice. And they sort of know that if I don't do it now, right, I might not make it. I might drink myself to death. My life is falling apart. I lost my jobs. I love my loved ones, my family. I'm homeless. I'm like, they're at this ultimate stage of sort of pain and suffering. And this is the beauty of pain and suffering, because it pushes us. It gives us the will to say, no, I want life. Right? And this is where we are in the crucible of humanity. It's like, look at the world today. Is this what you want?
What do you think is the next kind of step change to evolution? So there's the most evolved things out there that we know of in 3D. They're human consciousness, human evolution. Where's that going to go? Is that going to stay in 3D? You think is going to be contained in the human body, or do you think there's
Yeah, I mean, those are very esoteric discussions. We are already in 5D partially because, we are spiritual beings in 3D reality. Sort of my philosophy of spirituality, where I've come out on it, is that there's a purpose to being in 3D, right? If we're sort of on the other side of the veil, if you want to call it that way, we're in spiritual form after we die. There's many things that we can experience that we can specifically experience here in 3D. So in 3D, we have to deal with time and space, right? Pain and suffering. We have a human avatar. Things take time. There's lag time. We can move pieces around on the chessboard and see what happens in this holographic reality. What if I have a lot of discipline and I avail myself to this or that, and then I can create things. And, if I'm just a sloth on my couch, I'm going to degenerate into this. There's no good or bad. These are all just experiences, right? And these are all just exerting our will. How do we want to direct our life? So 3D is sort of this playground, this sort of simulation we come into, and we experience it through our avatar. And we get to play. We get to play with form and matter. We get to have relationships. We get to, maybe raise kids and have friends and family and build businesses and, find our limits in terms of, in sports or art or creation, or we want to make music, or, it doesn't matter what it is. All of it is an expression, and this is the beautiful thing. I mean, if you kind of come to this place where I've landed, it's like, wow, this is amazing. This is a playground. Right. And we get to play with all these things. And guess what? Sometimes it's cruel and hard. And sometimes we break our heart. And sometimes shit doesn't go the way we want it to go. And we lose businesses, and we go through bankruptcies, and we lose jobs, and we get sick. And then we have to figure out, why did I get sick? And what can I do, to address this. And but there's a beauty of poetry to all of it, because the pain and suffering is actually what sort of propels us forward. Because I know from my days when I was wildly successful in many different ways, the way the world looks at it, I wasn't learning all that much. I was learning how to make more money, right? Yeah. I was learning how to, some of those things, but it was it was when everything fell apart. It was when my marriage, my business, my money disappeared, and I got stripped naked by the universe. And I was just, I was in deep, deep anguish and pain, suicidal at times. My whole life had fallen apart. Everything I had thought I was had just dissipated. And it's in that pain and suffering that you're like, I got to find a way out. Right? And so pain and suffering has a very poetic quality to it, as hard as it is to live through it. And we all, in our own way, have pain and suffering in our lives. No matter if you look at someone that you think, they've made it, they've got all this money, they've got fame and fortune, all this stuff, they're my coaching clients. Some of them are the most miserable people in the world. They have everything, right? There's other people that don't have very much. Yeah. And they smile all day long. And so it's not the outer external circumstances. Yeah. Now, I will definitely say that, there's a huge benefit to knowing where your next rent check comes from and being able to feed your family and not have some of these really, heavy problems in life. But at a sort of base level, and they've even measured this economically, like, around $60,000, $70,000, maybe it's now more now with inflation, but, there was this sort of, not that high a threshold where sort of your basic needs are met, where the marginal increase in happiness from each dollar more you made was sort of diminishing. And then by the time it was a few $100,000, there was almost no more happiness. It was like, now I want my time back. I want my health back. I want, I want to enjoy life. I want to have a love in my life. I want to experience all these other things because having more money didn't really solve anything. So I think, we're moving into a world where we're going to rebalance how we view life and what we value the highest, right? It's a more holistic way of looking at life. It's not just how much money I make. It's also, am I doing work that I find is meaningful, right? Do I get up in the morning and I'm excited to go to work? And am I expressing sort of my gifts and my talents and my superpowers? Do I feel safe? Do I feel seen? Do I feel heard? Do I have enough free time to work on my health and my hobbies? And, do I have time with my family and my friends? Do I have social time? Do I have hobbies that I can explore? Maybe I make my money being an accountant, but really my love is playing the guitar in the weekend with my amateur band, and do I have time for that? I think we're going to move to a more holistic view on life where we de-emphasize the material. It'll still be there. Right. It's still nice to have a nice car, a nice house, and be able to go to the grocery store and pay for your groceries without worrying if your debit card is going to bounce, But I think we're moving to a world where we're going to de-emphasize that material side. Also, let's idolize it. Right. And say more like, okay, well, I actually want to be healthy and I want to have enough free time and I want to have family and have friends and, so all these other aspects of life that are actually make life beautiful. Instead of working my tail off, be stressed. And then 1 week a year, I get to go to the beach and drink myself into a stupor for 5 days. And then I got to go back into my old life, and that is sort of my reprieve from, I'm on my way to retirement at some point. Where then I'm going to live the life I love.
So can you disclose, so I think you're talking about the great abdiction concept.
Addiction?
Where we surrendering our powers to some other forces. We're giving away our powers abdication. Oh yeah. So I didn't know that word. That's why I forgot it. All right. Is that the concept you're talking about?
Yeah, but it's not an abdication
Abdication. Yeah, that's right.
that we do this formally. I mean, you have to imagine that we're born into this world, all of us, right?
Oh, yeah.
And, our parents have a certain understanding of the world, and that's based on what their parents taught them. And, we are born in the fishbowl.
Mhm.
So if I'm born into the United States, I'm culturally born into this fishbowl. If I'm born in Japan, I'm going to be culturally born in Japan, which has different values and different understandings.
Yeah.
There are parallels, but there's also vast differences. This is why we have big cultural differences across the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then, media and advertising and marketing and, all these things sort of, program us with an understanding of what life is all about,
Mhm.
right? And here in the Western world, that life is very much about you're going to find happiness by having a flourishing career, making oodles of money, having big cars and, whatever, have a big house and because that is power. That is like, everything is materialistic. That understanding, I believe, is going to change, right?
Mhm.
Because we are abdicating sort of power to, this cultural belief, this conditioned belief
Mhm.
that is where we're going to find our happiness. But if you really peel the onion back and you sort of look at it honestly, right?
Mhm.
When you ask these people, 60+% of chronic illness, and you ask them, are you happy with your chronic illness?
Yeah.
Right. And they will tell you, no, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
And, when you ask people with diabetes and you ask people in jobs that they actually don't even enjoy, but their mortgage is so high and,
Mhm.
they were compelled to buy this car because they thought that was going to make them more important. But, their car payment is like up to their nose. And when you really just sit down and is this making you happy? Right. Are you fulfilled?
Mhm.
A lot of people will tell you, no, I'm just on the treadmill and I don't really know why I'm doing this. This is just how the world works. This is what they told me. I was supposed to go to school. I was
Mhm.
supposed to go to college and I was supposed to go, get a good job, buy everything with a mortgage, with loans and lease cars. And so now I've got all these debt obligations that are sort of holding me hostage because I can't even get off the treadmill because, I can't pay my mortgage. I can't pay my car. I can't. So I have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And then because I'm sort of unhappy, I numb myself. I drink alcohol. The legal limit of an alcoholic, I think for a woman, it's 2 glasses of wine a week. And I think for a male, it's 3 glasses of alcohol a week.
Mhm.
I know, I live in a beautiful neighborhood. It's a very common thing that, these housewives at 5:30, they can cork open their wine and so to cope.
Yeah.
When you ask the question, why do you need a glass of wine at 5:30?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Why do you need alcohol to numb yourself? Right?
Yeah.
Is that healthy? Is that the sign of a good life? Right? That you have to numb yourself. I took my kids last summer. We were doing a road tour and we ended up going through Vegas, and I just wanted to show it to them because to me, Vegas is like the epitome of sort of the United States, right?
Mhm.
And when you walk through these casinos, it's nothing but mindless gambling. There's a shopping mall in every casino, and in the middle of the day, it's all darkened out. People walk around with these, these big old, cocktails, and there's, and they're,
Yes.
and when you look in people's eyes, right? To me, it's very sad because it's just a blank stare.
They're not there. Yeah.
There's nobody home.
Mm-hmm.
They're just walking around, just escaped,
Mm-hmm.
just numbing themselves. But we think that, but on the plane over to Vegas, everybody is like excited.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, it's a sad thing.
Yeah.
It's a very sad thing when you walk around Vegas sober and you look and you say, there's just someone sitting there for 6 hours, just like, putting coins in and just
Mm-hmm.
probably wasting away money that they don't really have to lose. And, this sort of numbing and escaping is what our entire society in the U.S. and most Western society is built around, right? And a lot of it is image, the entire makeup and Botox and all these different things and these surgeries that people do to themselves. And they're, they're mutilating themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? For what? So you don't have a wrinkle? You're supposed to have wrinkles. That's human. Like, we grow older. But what are we doing? I mean, these are synthetic chemicals you're putting in your body.
Yeah.
And then you're surprised that, I mean, breast implants, there's BII is breast implant inflammation. This is a very serious disease that is well documented. There are many, many women have become terribly ill. Their thyroid systems have crashed. The synthetics are leaching into their body.
Yeah.
For what? Because, we tell them that they should be looking like some model that doesn't exist anyway, because all these pictures are photoshopped. These aren't even real women you're compared with, right? But, supposedly you're going to be happy when you have that. And this is pervasive in our society. I mean, this is a large part of our economy is based on basically selling you things you don't need. But this treadmill, when you put on CNBC, and they're talking about how the stock market is going up and the profits are up and all this stuff. And there's people that can't pay their bills, right? But the companies are, increasing their prices and all this stuff, and we're celebrating it. We think that is advancement, right?
Yeah.
I believe that the next iteration of society is one where human well-being is central, right? And so all capitalism economic theory should be, first of all, within the confines of the finite limits of planet Earth, because that's our planet that gives Earth. And, the solution is not Mars. The solution is to become a proper steward of this beautiful planet that we have.
Yeah.
That can give, I mean, this planet can feed 20 billion people if we organize it properly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that we have too many people, we're abusing, right? And we're not recycling. We're not, there's a industrial design concept that we have it's cradle to grave today. Basically, we design obsolescence into our products, and it goes in a landfill.
Yeah.
We have another design philosophy is called cradle to cradle, and you basically design the recycling and upcycling of all materials, into the product. Now that makes the product upfront slightly more expensive, but you have no more landfills.
Yeah.
You design the product so it comes apart, it doesn't, pollute the ocean or go in a landfill. We have all these technologies. We know all these things, right? It's just, what do we deem important? We deem important the quarter on Wall Street or life on Earth, human well-being or peddling crap that humanity doesn't need.
Yes.
It's a reframing, and this is really the curing of this psychosis. Because if you believe life is about all these things that make you sick and ill and addicted and dependent, then that's a form of psychosis. You can't frame it any other way. Yeah. And where does it originate? Spiritual starvation. Because if you understand the poetry and the divinity that's sort of woven into the fabric of life, if you can reconnect with that part, you don't need any of those things.
Yeah, definitely. So I remember in the book you talk about humanity's kind of misuse of feminine or not appropriating the feminine energy, the
feminine principles,
and then calling it sacrilege, right? Talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, it starts fundamentally, and I'm not talking about men or women. I'm talking about masculine and feminine principles, which is energies, right? And these are qualities, and these are the primordial forces of creation, right? So if we have the yin yang model, that the Taiyitu model, the yin and the yang, that's what we're talking about. And over the last 2,000-3,000 years, and not in every civilization, but predominantly throughout all the civilizations that we've seen over the last, 3,000 years, there's been a masculine dominant orientation.
Yeah.
Meaning that everything that we consider feminine in nature, feminine intelligence, intuition, feeling, sensuality, other those things, we demonized it.
Yeah.
And by doing so, we have sort of created this rational, this obsession with the rational mind, but not the feeling heart. And it's represented in everything in society, the way we structure, the way we look at Mother Earth, the way we handle and treat women still today, not just in the West, but in many countries around the world, women can still not vote. They are still being mutilated. They are still being honor killed in certain societies. So, as a holistic view on humanity is like, oh, we have not really evolved that much. And even here in the West, there's many ways that not so much legally, where I think most of the rights have been pretty well established, but there's still many other ways where, we look at women and hold them to different standards than men. There was a very interesting, there was just in the news, there was this lady that sold a business, a young girl in her 20s sold a business to JP Morgan, and it was a fraud, and she got and there's a whole thing that all these young female entrepreneurs, because there's been like 2, 3 or 4 or so. Toronto's is another one. The fact of the matter is, there's young men doing this all day long, but there's one girl, that does it, and we highlight it, we blow it up. Like all these young female entrepreneurs are now bamboozling everybody.
Yeah.
And, so they're being held to a different standard, right? And that is a sort of a big cultural problem that we have. So this sacrilege of the feminine principle, it's pervasive everywhere. Now, when you think about Mother Earth, which is, a feminine principle because it's Mother Earth, right? She gives life. Everything in creation is feminine in nature. Now, you and I are still masculine and men, but the actual fact of creation is feminine in nature. So when we look at how we handle Mother Earth, how we handle businesses, how we handle, health and all these different things, we abuse it. Right? We don't have any, we don't hold it sacred.
Yeah.
And so the restoration of this feminine principle is really looking at life and the life affirming and restoring that to its sacred, position.
Yeah.
And so if you would consider Mother Earth sacred, you would handle her very differently. Right. You would address your pollution. You would address all the abuses that we do, the way we build cities, the way, there's so many different ways that we are disrupting her ability to basically provide life to us.
Yeah.
That is a sacrilege of the feminine principle, right? On a grand scale. And so if you would hold her, restore that to a sacred position, then you would look at something like that and say, well, clearly we need to address that.
Yeah.
And this is pervasive throughout, society, throughout our culture, in many different aspects.
Yeah. How would you say, can you describe the future in which we do restore it? What does that future look like?
Well, the principle in the universe is harmonization, right? And so it's not balance. It's not like making it neutral, making it 50-50. Nothing in nature is 50-50.
Yeah.
A balance is a point in time and space, right? Universe operates on the principle of harmony. It's always flowing and it's always kind of morphing like a field, it's sort of, and, imagine you're in a relationship and there's a masculine and feminine, there's a man and a woman in a relationship. And, it's always like sort of give and take. It's never static. It's never like perfectly 50-50, it's always flowing. Someone feels a little stronger, a little better, and I'm doing a little bit more. And then the other one, sort of comes in and, you support each other and, harmony is really the principle that organizes life. And so when we think about the masculine and feminine principles, is that sometimes the masculine principle is more appropriate. Sometimes you need structure and discipline and sort of this willpower and sort of the qualities that we associate with the masculine. And sometimes you need the feminine, you need nurturing, you need feeling, you need intuiting, you need a little bit more softness.
Yeah.
And so it's an ebb and flow. And when we talk about a fully integrated human being, it doesn't mean that we become androgynous sexually. It means that we have now integrated these two sort of energies within ourselves. And so in the situations where we need to feel ourselves more to the masculine, we will do that. And when we sort of need to lean more on the feminine and allow intuition to guide us and nurturing, and, we take on that sort of energy and it flows within us, and it flows, and we're just a fractal. So we see this feminine or masculine feminine harmony. We see this in nature. We see this in the cosmos. We see this on all levels because everything that happens on the micro happens on the macro, right? Yeah. And so this is sort of where the future is going, where, and we don't want to overshoot. We don't want to now say, okay, we're going to put the masculine in the penalty box and we're going to do everything feminine, right? Now everything needs to be feminine. No, I mean, that's not the organization. That's not the immutable laws of the universe. Yeah. It's a unified field that has two primordial forces, which is a masculine and a feminine. We even notice in the sin wave. So when you have a sin wave, one complete sin wave, it has the upward arc, right? And then goes through neutral and it goes down, and that's the feminine, and then it comes back to neutral. That's one sin wave. Everything is frequency and vibration in this universe. Everything has within it a masculine, an up curve, an expansion, and then it has a contraction in it, which is the feminine. Everything has dark and light. Everything has a moon and a sun. I can go across all levels of creation and explain to you that this same primordial force comes back everywhere, but it needs to be in harmony. And in especially socially and culturally, we have sort of engaged in this sacrilege, and this was really driven a lot by religious institutions, where the clergy wanted to be the middleman to God, and the worshiping of the feminine was sort of in the way of that. This is why in some religions, women cannot be priests.
Yeah. Maybe talking about actionable steps, what people can start doing today to start shifting or contributing to the solution of the crisis that we're facing.
Well, first of all, read my book. Really, this is a personal endeavor to really educate yourself. And sort of look at reality and say, okay, well, who am I? What do I want to create? Or who do I want to be? And imagine that everything you think, say, and do has an immediate impact. You're moving atoms around in your universe, and your circle of influence might be limited. It might be very large. Doesn't matter. But when you change, everything around you that you touch changes. Right. And we know this very clearly because if let's say I go into a store somewhere, or I go, and I go in with a bad attitude. I'm angry because of something. I have a rage. I have a temper about me. And, and I say things in a very short and curt way, and I'm sort of rude about it. Guess what I'm going to get back? Right? I'm going to get some reflection of that back. Now, when I go into the same place and I'm polite and I'm kind and I'm caring and, maybe patient because they're busy, and, and I say a nice word, how you doing today, or whatever, guess what I'm going to get back? Right? And so this is a very direct holographic reality that we live in. And, today I think very few people realize, everything you say, you think, you do, that means that you have opinions about things that are happening in this world. And when those are hateful and vengeful and righteousness and you wish violence and ill things on other people you don't even know by name, right? You are sending that energy into the universe, and you are creating the morphogenetic field wherein these wars and pollution and all these things are possible. Now, you might not connect the dots in that way, but I can tell you, a quantum physicist will tell you this is exactly how the morphogenetic field works. So this is science. This is not like some woo-woo stuff that Robert came up with. So what you can do is see yourself as a spiritual poet, right? And what is the most beautiful poetry that I can bring into the world today through the way I express myself, the way I think about others, the way I think about the world? And, maybe that's walking down the street and you see some trash in the thing. When I go to the beach, I always pick up stuff and I throw it in the trash. Yeah, I didn't put it there, but I still want that beach to be clean. And maybe if I do it, maybe someone else sees that. Maybe they're inspired by that, right? I know for sure if I don't pick it up, nothing changes. And I do this mostly, also to show my kids. And there's so many of these little things that you can do, right? And so seeing yourself as a spiritual poet as like, I have an effect on this world. Now, I might not be able to change the whole world, and I might not be able to change wars in the Ukraine or Israel, and I might not be able to solve all the plastic in the ocean and all that.
Yeah.
But I can change what I do. I can stop using plastics that I just throw away. I can consume other products. I can vote with my wallet. I can decide where I work. If a company is not aligned with my values, I can look for other work and find a company where I feel aligned with their mission and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of B Corps in the world, and there's a lot of conscious companies, and they're making beautiful products that we need. And so, there's many different ways that you express yourself today in the world where you can make changes. Right? You can buy organic products. You can go to farmers market, support, the local farmers that sell their produce there that's made with love and care.
Yeah.
And now you're supporting that farm that is something that you would want. It's healthier for you, right? Maybe it's marginally more expensive. So, there's very practical ways that we can just look at our life and say, okay, well, what is the most beautiful poetry? I'm a spiritual poet. I'm the sculptor and the sculpture at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? So how beautiful can I make this expression? How kind can I be? How compassionate can I be? How forgiving can I be? Even when someone wrongs me, right? Can I just say, it's okay. I'm going to let it go, instead of having to retaliate or get back to them and perpetuate a cycle of violence or abuse or whatever it might be, right? Maybe you were abused. That doesn't mean you have to pass it on. You have a choice. And of course, I'm not belittling the fact that maybe you got abused, but perpetuating it is not the answer. It's interrupting the pattern is the answer, right? And if you think about, Jesus's teachings, especially, turn the other cheek, forgive the other person, forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they're doing, right? What he was saying is they're acting from unconsciousness. They actually have a belief system that makes them do these things. And I know they're wrong, and I know they're not supposed to be done, but forgive them because they don't know any better, right? I don't have to retaliate. I can just say like, okay, I don't want to express that back. I'm going to stop this pattern right here.
100%, man. Yeah, so let's see. I think we have about 8 to 10 more minutes. Is there any specific topic that we haven't touched about that you think would be more of a priority to talk about? We did talk about like technology and evolution. Did you want to do more?
Book there?
Yeah.
Let me just, I think we should show it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Here we go.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to tell you how it's going. Is it going well?
I think so. I mean, we're touching on the topics from the book here. So maybe why is personal sovereignty the key to overcoming the poly-crisis, and how, the individual reclaim it?
I think,
I mean,
if I think here, I want to talk a little bit about the final call, mankind's phoenix rising. Because phoenix is also sort of, my personal symbol. And yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit high level over that there's just, there's sort of this individual journey, but we're part of a grand odyssey that this whole galaxy is making, right? Yeah. We're part of something far grander than just our individual life. And, we can find beauty and inspiration in that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great starting point right there. Yeah. Just introducing the concept for those who haven't come across or haven't spent much time thinking about it, just help them realize it. And then,
right.
Yeah.
You want me to just dive into it? Okay. Yeah. So, towards the later part of the book, the last few chapters, I talk about the Phoenix Rising, and the Phoenix Rising is something that is, it's in my personal logo. I'm very sort of, I think it's a beautiful symbolism in the Phoenix Rising. And so what is the Phoenix Rising? It's sort of this, it's this esoteric wisdom that, this bird, the magical bird, the Phoenix, rises from the ashes. And so, sometimes things need to just completely come apart, and that can be our individual journey.
Yeah.
That can be, on a grand scale in nature. That can be on a grand scale, socially or geopolitically. It could be on a cosmic level. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we're in this Phoenix rising moment for mankind, right? And we are individually going through this process in our own hero's journey. We have to purify ourselves. In the Vedic philosophy, we call it sattva, which is love, truth, and purity in our own expression. Sort of, redeeming ourselves and rising from our lower nature proclivities, right? So it's greed and pleasure and debauchery and gluttony, and rising above these sort of very primal ways of living into our higher nature. And, we're purifying ourselves and we're elevating ourselves to sort of a higher level of living. Now that person that lives in his lowest nature needs to, dissipate in the ashes. And the new Phoenix is that new person that rises from the ashes. Now, on a mankind level, on a societal level, humanity level, this is occurring as well. And this is sort of this grand process that we're in. So this grand odyssey of the soul that I believe is individual, we also have a grand odyssey of humanity. And so there's an arc, that crosses across thousands of years in humanity. And we're going through all these trials and tribulations and all these different formats and civilizations that have risen and then collapsed. And, and now this sort of Western civilization, as we have known it, it sort of has reached its zenith. And it's fallen apart. It's kind of falling into its own axis. We saw this in the Roman Empire, right? Where, sort of the greed and the inner corruption and the structure, and all the grandeur of the Roman culture sort of collapsed on itself. And eventually they couldn't even build viaducts anymore. That they, 200 years before that, they were, having these engineering marvels. And they got to a point where they couldn't even build it anymore. Now, Western civilization is going through this, but this is a grand trajectory, this is a human, this is all of Earth is moving through this. We are all collectively sort of experiencing this. We're sort of in the movie, we're in the dream, but we're also all witnessing the dream at the same time. And this is sort of how reality works because, we're all a dream character in this collective dream that we call a shared reality. And this shared reality is going through massive changes, and it needs to change because there's certain things that are really going, sort of off the grid, right? Earth being one of them, but, even, socially, culturally, geopolitically, all these levels. And the Phoenix Rising is sort of seeing this big picture, like, oh my God, this is actually really beautiful. This sort of poetry in motion. We're seeing a new world being born. And there's many, and I invite people to seek out these people that can share these visions because, in the mainstream channels, you might not hear these stories, but there's many, many people, and some of them are very wise and very educated, and there could be quantum physicists, and there could be more spiritual oriented, there could be mystics and sages and teachers, and they will inspire you to see how all of this is really beautiful. It's a birthing process, right? And so this Phoenix rising from the ashes, that is not a painless event. The fire burns. When we have to walk the fire and leave sort of our old version behind us, and we have to grow into this sort of new skin, we're shedding skin. We're having to let go of things that we knew. And this is, we're going into the unknown, and going into the unknown is uncomfortable. And we're not going to really know what it all looks like. And things that we thought were real and permanent are just going to dissipate. And then it's like, oh my God, I thought that was real. I thought that was never going to go. And now it's all changing.
Yeah.
And we see some things today, you know, in the political arena, things like that, where certain concepts and ideas that we thought were just immutable are being challenged right now.
Yeah.
Right. And it's upsetting people because it's like, oh no, I thought that was untouchable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, things are getting touched. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I see this more in a sort of a larger scale, and I see like these are all the necessary sort of birthing contractions, and we're midwifing a new world. And the choice in this crucible is to be part of the midwifing team, right? Is like, I want to create this new world. I want to focus my energies on that. I don't want to, you know, have all my energy hijacked by the collapsing of what is sort of the old. I'm going to funnel my energy, my direction, like, you know, what is being born?
Mm-hmm.
Where can I see the green sprouts?
Yeah,
Where can I see the beautiful things? And even in our sort of really, you know, real physical world, I can promise you, if you start looking for them, there's companies and young entrepreneurs and ideas that are being brought in the world that are life-changing, that are a beautiful use of technology and science, that are creating healthy products, that are creating life-affirming services and products and treatments. And so when you start looking at all those things, you say, oh my God, there's a whole new world that didn't exist 10, 20, 15 years ago. These products weren't there. These services weren't there.
Sure.
And, you know, there's art being born. There's beautiful projects and architecture and design and, you know, and beauty is the language of God, right? And so if it's beautiful, right, you know that it sort of comes from a higher source, no matter what it is. That can be music, that can be a sculpture, that can be a business.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. It can be a politician that is actually saying beautiful things and standing for a higher truth, because we all recognize a higher truth when we hear it. When you hear I Have a Dream speech from Martin Luther King, I play it almost weekly in my car for inspiration, because it touches me to my bones, because it's a higher truth in it, right? I encourage everybody, listen to that speech. Listen to that man's voice, to the vibration, the energy, and the message that he shared. This was 1968, I believe, right? Long time ago. JFK has beautiful speeches about peace, the necessity for peace in the world. Nelson Mandela, Gandhi. I mean, there's been some epic people showing us what's possible, and they've done it to a large extent. They've shown us that there's roads and paths to be like that.
Yeah.
And there's leaders among us, right, that rise from time to time. And so, you know, for me, there's just a huge amount of inspiration. There's poetry in this whole process, even though it's messy. And I think when we can direct our attention, our awareness more to that than that which is rotten and nasty and evil and dark, then, you know, we are going to be propelled forward. That, you know, I want to be part of that. I'm a advisory board member of this beautiful organization in LA called Indivisible Arts. And they work with young kids around, and they use art as a vehicle to teach them consciousness. And, you know, one of the things I love about this organization is because they're these young kids that, you know, a lot of them they were just unlucky. They were born on the wrong side of the tracks. They come from foster homes. They come from, you know, broken families or economically challenged families that they don't have access to art. And, you know, when you see how these kids transform, right, and how hope gets instilled in it, and inspiration, and they're being reminded of their worth and their dignity, and they come alive, right? Those kids are going to go into the world creating beautiful things, right? And when every human being is the same essential need, right? We all want to be seen, we all want to be heard, and we all want to be loved. This is not rocket science. Seen, heard, and loved. This is the fundamental need of every human being. And so when we can reorient our educational systems, our cultural beliefs, our value systems, our norms, our businesses, our society, and say, well, how can we sort of instill that, right? How can we bring the humanity back, the soulfulness back, so people feel seen, heard, and loved. Because when they're seen, heard, and loved, and they feel good, they're going to contribute something beautiful to society. And hurt people hurt people. Hurt people damage things.
Yeah.
Happy people, fulfilled people, people that feel like they're seen, heard, and loved, they're not going to bring anything ill into the world.
Yeah.
They're going to want to spread that in the world, express that in the world. And I see this when we work with these young kids, and I don't work with them personally, but I see the work that's being done. And you take a young soul that's had a rough life already, and they're young, and the world could be cruel. And when you can turn that young life around, and you can then see the joy, and that they walk into the world with their head up high, and they sort of, we humanize them again, right? And they found their soul again. And then from that place of soulfulness and joie de vivre, we're going to create beautiful things.
Beautiful, man. Yeah. Robert, I think this is a good place for us to wrap up the conversation. I also, the listeners waited all the way till the end. Thank you, listeners, for still sticking around all the way
Appreciate it.
till here. And thank you again. And I hope millions of people will get to, read your book and get to know all these concepts and apply them in their life as well.
I hope so. I hope it infuses some inspiration and hope